pool, but let's see if I can make that work.
Looks like it.
Okay. Okay, so, you know, the topic here, and I might even share my screen, even though I know you guys are looking at this, and you're welcome to. You have access to all these documents. And when I first started putting together my ideas on what we would cover, I started to come up with a list of topics, and I put those into separate folders that you all should have access to. The folders look like this right here. They're under the team docs. And this is what I originally thought. I thought maybe we could break into different teams. That's like the calling broker team, the underwriting team, the loan team, the asset property management team, et cetera, that you guys have been considering. I'm now maybe thinking of those more because when I talked to some of you individually, you know, you kind of said, I don't really want to join any team. I want to talk about all those topics, right? So at the risk of, you know, somebody being in one team and then missing other topics, I kind of wanted to go ahead and develop maybe what I can think of as for me, it might be a lesson format kind of idea where I can present to you what I know about the topic, and then we can do an exercise where either you team up and go through things together, we get to share what you know, or in this case, I think we'll do like a group exercise as part of it. Okay, so here's this one for this week. I want to, and about 3 of you contacted me with individual properties, and we looked at those along the way. So I feel kind of safe right now to go, okay, let me try to cover this topic during the meeting. And you guys are welcome to. If you get a hot property, just text me and we'll, you know, put it in one of the folders and we'll go ahead and start to underwrite it together or whatever works out for you. Okay, so that's a little bit more flexible in these groups. Under the team docs folder that's shared, this is a folder, values matching. You guys can all go there if you want, and I'm going to display it on the screen. This is one of the topics in multifamily that I promise you changed. This is one of the things that changed my life. Probably there's 3 things that just completely changed my life, and this is one of the topics is values matching. Okay, and a lot of you are talking about it, and I like Cabrin's discussion of how he hires a VA. This is a lot like that, and a lot of you are talking to each other about, should we set up an LLC together? Should we go into a private equity firm as partners? This is one of the tools you're going to use, I hope, and I believe if it works for you the way it's worked for me, it literally can change your life. Okay, so this is a big deal. I put it in bullet format here of what I'm going to cover. At the bottom is the reference material. We got most of this material from the Traction book by Gino Wickman, which I told all you guys, please read that. And as you start to form your companies, use that book as your guiding principle for management. And I think maybe on one of the other calls, I'll do sort of a summary of the book to present to you how they lay out the different, you know, the quarterly, the annual, and the tools they use within it. They have 6 components of a business, and the first component is people. And they have this idea that they got from Jim Collins. Jim Collins talks about getting the right people on the bus and then getting them in the right seats. Okay, and I read Jim Collins, I think it's 20 years ago. I think I was in college when I read that, maybe 30 years ago. But he didn't give us a tool to figure out what this means. Who are the right people? This is sort of a, you know, this is a mystery for me at least, okay? And then the other idea, there's a book out there called Group Genius that I highly recommend for you to put on your list. And by the way, I want you guys, if you're willing, to start to engage. I've set up, you know, separate personal growth documents for you to start to think about your career, your goals, your dreams, what it is you want out of multifamily. And on there, I started to put like, you know, what books are you reading? What books do you want to read? And if you want to engage some of those together, we can possibly figure out a way to do that. So that's where this information was. But when we read Traction, that's the book that gave us the tool. And we call it values matching. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. So to scroll back up to the top, I kind of jumped to the bottom to give you the reference material of where this is from and where we learned it. We didn't make it up ourselves. I wish we did. because to me, it's been brilliant. Okay, so here's the first sort of understanding of values matching. Values match for the sake of who. So what I want you to think about separately is we still love those who are not values matches. So this is not like a method. I want you to be careful with this method, okay? This method is for figuring out who to go into business with. And I always use an example. Let's say we set our values and then we evaluate another person. Let's say it's a family member, right? A brother, a sister, a mother, a father, somebody we absolutely love. We can be not a values fit with them, but still love them, okay? I want you to understand that totally. But when you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to go into a 5 to 7 year deal, would I choose people that don't share the same values? Now, even if they're your brother or sister, I would argue to you, you don't need to go into business with them, because this is a lot like, we always use this marriage reference, or for 5 to 7 years, you're married to these people, right? So I would argue this is a separate thing. Values matching is for figuring out who you're going into business with. It's not figuring out who you love, okay? You love those people no matter what. That is not conditional, but it's unconditional, that love that you have for those people, even if they don't fit your values, okay? So I want you to be clear on that. Number two, we may still spend time with those people who are not values matches, right? But what you're trying to do is figure out, who am I not going to enter into a 5 to 7 year deal syndication with based on the matching of values? Okay, so that's the focus of values matching. And it changed who we did business with when we finally set our values and we finally started to values match. Okay, so here's MFG 5 core values. And I know you guys know this. I've talked to you about it a lot. And part of what we've tried to create in this group here is a group of values match people who can form this foundation of values first. Then they can go on top of that and build businesses. I would argue to you, you may decide at some point you're going into different businesses related to multifamily. For example, maybe you decide you're going to start a property management company for multifamily properties, right? Maybe you're going to decide, hey, I could go into a commercial brokerage of selling multifamily properties. I know how to write an OM. I know how to put all the numbers into that, right? So I would argue to you, if you look around and if you look at other syndicators, look, Steve O'Brien of Arcan Capital in Atlanta, he's a property manager and a syndicator, okay? Look at a lot of the other businesses. You'll see, look at Lindahl. I would argue to you, Lindahl is a syndicator, but they only syndicate the best properties. Their business is also education, and they make a lot of money on education each year. Okay, and that's the gosh awful truth, for a lot of these businesses. They're not syndication only businesses. They're running multiple divisions of a multifamily property company. Okay, so I want you to sort of keep expanding your mind and to possibly not be afraid to consider these other options. And you start to run into this problem, right? How do I find the people that I'm going to partner with in these businesses? Because these businesses could last 10, 20, 30 years. So I present to you, right, the 5 values from Multifamily Geeks as a starting point. I think you should absolutely use the Traction book to develop your own values. You're welcome to take anything you want from the MFG values. You can change them, modify them, but you're really on a search for what do you believe, who you are, and what these values are that you can list out. And we ended up with 5. You may end up with 3. I think the Traction book says, I forget, 5 to 10 values or something, right? But they give you guidance on how to set yours. So we came up with this team player, humbly confident, do what we say, do what's right, and continually growing. Okay, and I want to use those tonight to practice the values matching technique. And then you're going to use this whole system when you start to build your own company. You're going to sit around with the people that you partner with, and you're going to say, what are our values? And you're going to agree on them. And then you're going to proceed to evaluate each other in the same type system. Okay. So with that said, and most of you know that, there may be one more item that you're not aware of yet. In the Traction book, they have another component called GWC. So GWC stands for, does the person get it? do they want it, and do they have the capacity to do it? So here's what happens. You may end up with an individual where you go, hey, this person's a values match. They fit all 5 values. But guess what? They don't want the job. They don't want to be in a company. They don't want to start a business. They don't want it, right? That would be an excluding factor. So you're saying, does this person get it? And that could be another factor, right? Do they just get the whole idea of what we're doing here? And if they don't, that would be a no. And so there comes to this sort of evaluation technique of values matching. It's, do they fit the 5 core values? And do they GWC the position? So let's say the position is, one of the 5 positions within the traction book. They give you 5 positions to start with: the visionary, the integrator, and the managers of operations, marketing, and finance, right? Every company has those 5 positions. Now, if there's only 2 of you in your company, you're covering all 5 positions. You're doing the work of 5 people, whether you like it or not. That's just the way a business is. Okay, so now let's say you're evaluating a person. Do they fit as the manager of marketing? You're wondering, do they get it? Do they get this job of marketing for the multifamily business? Do they want it? Are they even interested in this, right? And do they have the capacity to do this? Like, maybe they don't have the skills right now, but you can tell they've got the understanding to move into this job and to do it well. They've got that capacity as part of them built in, right? So this system comes up, and I'll show you in a minute when we actually practice the values matching. This comes up with a yes or no for each of the 3 questions. So you'll see things like yes, yes, yes. That means they get it, they want it, and they have the capacity to do it. Yes, no, yes would be no. We said no, they don't want it, right? So that person just doesn't want the position. They would not be the right seat for that position. Maybe they fit in another seat. Okay. Okay. So with that said, let me keep moving on. All right. See how I'm doing here. So now we come down to this thing of values match versus not yet. Okay. So as we and what we're doing here is having an open, honest discussion with each other about whether we fit or not. And if we don't fit, it's not an emotional discussion. It's just a discussion of, hey, if we don't fit, we should move away from each other, right? And so I'll talk about that in a minute. But first, there's this idea of how much is a fit and how much is no, this is not going to work, right? So we're going to use a system in a minute where we use the thumbs up, thumbs sideways, and thumbs down. It's just a 3-part system per value. And so that's what you'll see here. More than 2 thumbs sideways would be, this is not a values match. This is a not yet. And I'll explain that in a second here, why we use the words not yet. And then any thumbs down, like let's say, let's say it's continually growing, and you go, nope, for this person, that's a thumbs down. They do not exhibit that value very often. That would be not a values match, and we use this word not yet. And then any single no of any of the 3 GWCs. So if we go through, do they get it, want it, have the capacity to do it? If any one of those 3 is a no, that would be not a fit for this position / company / potentially, the venture we're setting up or the syndication we're working on. So why do we use the word not yet? It's important as you go through this process to keep in mind that people do change and people do learn. And if we go through and say you're rating me and you're considering adding me to your company, and you go, well, Max doesn't, do what he says, right? He says he'd call, he doesn't. He says he'll be there, he isn't. He's a thumbs down on do what he says. So we get to label me a not yet. It doesn't mean that forever, I'm not a values match. It just means for the moment, I haven't figured out that value yet. And so over time, you might want to check back and see if I've worked on that value. Have I changed to where now potentially I could be a values match for your venture? Okay, so I think you're building into the system a lot of safety catches, right? Because As we're evaluating this, we're asking each other what values we believe in and do we fit together. But things do change over time. So hence the idea of not yet is sort of a temporary understanding of at the moment, this person does not fit our values, but we could check back a year later and they could totally fit now. Okay, so that's, I think, important understanding. So here we have not yet the idea that at the moment, this person is not a values match. The idea that in the future, this person could become a values match. I think that's an important part of the system. Okay. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I want to try to have you guys go through an exercise now with some of that preliminary information sort of laid out. And I've done this with you personally with maybe 3 of you. So you're going to have a slight advantage. With the rest of you, I don't think I've done this yet. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to decide on a person in your mind. And you got 3 choices for this exercise. You can decide on a person that you know is not a fit for you. Okay, you've already thought about it. You know, like, I can't work with this person. This person's not a fit. Just pick someone at work or pick someone, you know, that you know, maybe even one of your close friends, but you know you couldn't be in a business deal with them. That's one option for you to pick. And we don't want to know. You're going to do this in your mind with this person, not sharing. You're not going to share who this is with us, okay? Now, if you're in a team and you decide what the values are, then this is all open and you do this right with each other in the same room, talking to each other about it. But in this case, you're just practicing the values matching system, okay? So we don't want to know who the person is, but one option would be a person you can't work with that you know is not a match for you. Another option would be a person that you think you can work with, okay? So you could pick somebody else that's already a business partner of yours where you're like, I know this person, I get along great with. This is, you know, somebody that'd be great to test this system of values matching with this person, okay? And then I would argue maybe a third option would be somebody on the team, and don't tell us who it is, but somebody here in this team or another one of your teams where you're thinking, I think this person should be on in my private equity multifamily investment company. Okay, so you're picking a person in your mind. All right. How about that so far? Let me check in with you guys because I've been yapping here. Do you have a person in your mind? Give me a thumbs up if you're thinking of somebody. You're going to values match them. You're not going to tell us who it is. You're just going to run through the system here. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you got somebody. Okay, I see a bunch. I see a thumbs up. Anybody unclear on this so far and you want to ask questions at this point? Okay, good. Thank you. But feel free to interrupt me because I'm not always clear about this stuff. Okay, so now that you got a person in your mind, here's the actual system. A thumbs up means that they exhibit the value most of the time. A thumb sideways means that they exhibit the value some of the time. And a thumbs down means that they exhibit the value rarely. Okay, so it's not perfect, right? This is a very general system. It's not technical. It's kind of, you're trusting your heart to know what you know about the person. Okay, that's going to be the system. Then as we go through the GWC, you're going to give it a yes or no for each of the 3. Do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have the capacity to do it? Okay. Then compare the values match versus not yet and decide for this person. Okay, so in your mind, you're gonna have this person and we're gonna go ahead and test whether or not they meet the standard as a values match, or if you're gonna go at the moment, I think this person is not a values fit with me. I probably shouldn't be in business with them. Okay, so and you're going to use our values for now from MFG, but remember at some point you're literally either personally you're figuring out your own values, or as a group you're going to go, I got a team together already. I'm going to go through that value setting exercise and traction, and we're going to set our own values as a group. Okay, so you're just going to use ours temporarily for this exercise. Okay, now switch the person. Okay, let me see what it is. Repeat the process, take some feedback from team members. Okay, so this is my exercise, all right? I'm not sure if this is going to be perfect, but I hope it allows you all to sort of engage the process of values matching. Okay, so you got the person in your mind. And I'm going to read you the first value, right? So you're thinking of the person. The first value is team player, open, honest, transparent. Okay, so think of that person. Give a rating, give a thumbs up, thumbs sideways. Don't tell us who it is. We don't want to know. You're just doing this in your mind, but you're literally going, this is how you do it in a meeting, by the way. You all sit around in a meeting and give a thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. So what do you say? You got it in your mind? That first value, team player, open, honest, transparent. Okay, good, Jay. Thank you. Okay, good, Cabrin. Trina, okay. Okay, good, Michael. Okay, now, part of your brain might be asking the question right now, what if I don't know? Okay, and this is difficult. Let's say we just met, right? How do I know if they're a team player or not? So I would argue to you that as you set your values and you start to sort of get in the mode and talk to people about this regularly, you're going to start to kind of, you're going to start to kind of get a feeling right off the bat. And I would trust your feelings at first. Okay. Trust yourself. Sometimes we sort of ignore our heart, we ignore our mind, we ignore all this stuff going, okay. So if you have a feeling, go with it. On the other hand, if you don't have a feeling where you go, I just met this person, I just don't know, then I think it's fine to give them the benefit of the doubt for the moment. Just say, okay, for the moment, I'm going to rate them as a thumbs up for team player for the moment until I get to know them better. You just don't have any other choice. And it's kind of nice to err on the side of positivity, just because how can you err on the other side? It just seems so harsh, right? So, okay, let's go to the next one. Humbly confident, no arrogance, no entitlement, facts over charisma. You're thinking of this person in your mind. You're kind of trusting what you know about them, and go ahead and give them the rating. And go ahead and actually hold up the value. Is it this, this, or this? Okay. 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 Nice. All right. I'm going to keep going unless you stop me. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Think of this person in your mind. Do what they say. Be realistic and be reliable. And I also would argue to you, sometimes your question is, I don't even know what that value means, so some of this is your brain trying to play out, what does the value really mean? And that can be a part of the process too. So we're kind of rushing through it right now, but you're going to go through this a little bit longer with your team members. All right, so think of this person in your mind, trust your feeling, you've had some interactions with them, and you guys, on this one, if I say I'm going to call you, I said I was going to call Michael at 3 yesterday, I think it was, and I didn't call him till like 3:15, and I had to say to him, hey, I'm sorry, I missed that value, so you're and hey, if somebody has to go to the hospital or something like that and they didn't call you, that kind of stuff you're going to overlook. Okay, that's just not fair, right? We're all humans. So you're kind of looking for a consistent pattern of, do they tell me I'm going to do this and they don't do it? And you might not know them well enough, so you might give them the benefit of the doubt. But what do you got right now? Go ahead and give a rating. Hold up thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down. What is it for your person? Do your best. Do your best. It's not perfect. Okay, and we do check this over time, and people can change too. So, okay, good. You got your ratings. Go to the next. Do what's right. Consider all perspectives. Now, this one's tough, you guys, because for us, for multifamily geeks, the idea that there is a right and a wrong, I don't know if that even exists. Two people can have completely opposite ideas of what's right. Okay, so for us, that just means consider all perspectives. I got a friend and he didn't want to do something, and my job is just to ask him, okay, why do you feel that way? What are you thinking? What are your experiences? What is it that's guiding you into that decision right now, right? I'm just trying to be as open as I can to this. So that's kind of what this value is. Are they sort of open to exploring everybody's side of the story kind of thing? Okay, think of your person, hold up your rating. Do your best. I know it's hard. I know this is a little bit, and plus I don't think a lot of us have practiced this. Okay, so this is very kind of out there for us, but trust yourself and move forward with it. Okay. All right, let's go to the last one. Continually growing. Open to the idea that they could learn something new that could change their perspective. What do you give them? Think about your person. Trust yourself. Okay, go ahead. Michael, it's tough. Michael, do you know the person well enough?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, trust yourself. What do you give them?
But that might be the problem. That might be the problem. See, I know.
Oh.
and I
You
have
know
got,
them too well?
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, the issue would be, see, when you're in a business relationship is different from a like a coworker relationship.
okay.
So I think
Okay.
that's what's affecting my opinion
True.
because
And it's
there's I mean
also different. Go ahead.
no, because they're like supervisor positions and then they're like coworkers and then that dynamic changes relationships. So your opinion, well, my opinion is based on that aspect, I think.
Good. Waters here, I would argue. And also, when you guys sit in a team, let's say you pick 5 people and you go, we're going to form a company together. And now you sit there and develop your values together. And now you sit there and evaluate each other right in front of each other.
Right.
This is different because now you're all agreeing that we're going to follow these values. Okay. And that's different from just sort of evaluating someone that may not even know they exist. All right. So
Yeah.
just take that with a grain of salt and be careful with it, you know, and give, I would always argue, I'm going to, at the next section, I'm going to argue for, you know, err on the side of caution here, you know. And definitely humans are humans. We are what we are, you know, we're not perfect. We make mistakes, you know, that all that stuff is sort of put into this process as you're thinking through it. Okay. So now at the end of our exercise, let's go through what we would say is a standard. Okay, so how many of you had more than 2 thumbs sideways? You had 3 or more for your person. Anybody have 3 or more? Okay, so Michael, that would be considered, according to this set of values in this situation, not a values fit for you. And I would argue what you're saying is true. The extenuating circumstances you're mentioning demand that you would investigate this further with this person.
Yeah.
You know, this is not a done deal for this person, you know. And I think it's, you know, well, let's go to the next section. Okay, let's go to this. Let's go to GWC. Okay, think of your person. You're still thinking of your person. Do they, for the role you're thinking of in your company or that they should play or whatever, and be a little bit specific about the role, would they get that role? Do they want that role, even want to be involved in such a role? And do they have the capacity to do that role? And you're trying to think in your mind a yes or no for each of those 3 and come up with a 3-digit pattern. Your best option is yes, yes, yes. That's your best option. Anything less than that, where there's a no involved, you're starting to worry that this person might not be a fit for that position. And together, these 2 components are they the right person on the bus? And that second component of GWC is, are they in the right seat? Right? Because maybe you evaluate them as the marketing manager and you're like, no, they don't get marketing. They can't do that role. They're not a GWC for that position. But let's try them over here in finance. And you're like, yeah, they get it, want it, and completely have the capacity to do it. That's the right seat for them. So together, this is the idea of the right people on the bus, and then are they in the right seats on the bus? Okay, so you're thinking of your person again. You've got all your ratings. Michael came up with more than, if it's 3 or more sideways, you're worried they're not a fit. Did anybody come up with a thumbs down for people of the values? Anybody have that? Okay, so any 1 thumbs down means you're worried they're not a fit. Okay, and any in the GWC, any no means possibly they're not a fit / and or they could just be in the wrong seat. They may actually be a values match, but they may be sitting in the wrong seat. And that's when you start to move everybody around. You're like, okay, let's try you in finance this quarter. You're going to be the visionary this quarter, and you're going to be the integrator this quarter, because I believe now everybody fits in the GWC of those seats. Okay, so all right, let's see what it is. All right, So we're kind of, and I apologize a little, but I don't know much of a better way to go through this process. This is a little bit sterile and a little bit classroomish as you start to experiment with this. And I would argue you're making a list of all the people that you would consider to be business partners, and you're trying to practice this values matching process on them. Okay. Here's what it means. Every human has the right to move away from others that don't fit their values. Now, we use a very sort of low-key term here, move away. Move away is a gentle approach, okay? And the traction book argues that you should take a 90-day process. Let's say you're in a company and you're using traction, and this person comes up as not a fit for values. They get a 90-day process, a due diligence process. They get 30 days to discuss with you, are they not a fit or not? Another 30 days to practice whether or not this is appropriate for them and they really do fit or not. And another 30 days to work it out for everybody to decide, is this relationship going to move on and we're going to be matches, or we're going to move away from each other? Okay, so traction is advocating for a due diligence 90-day process. And I would err on the side of caution here, right? This is a big deal in terms of, and remember, go back to that idea that this could be my brother or sister or mom, and I love them to death. It's just the idea that I'm not gonna form an LLC with them, and I'm not gonna start to split, a syndication with them, right? Stay focused on that idea. We can still love people that don't fit our values, and every human has the right to develop their own values. And every human has the right to sort of seek out their own group. So keep in mind the fairness of this. Just because you decide somebody's not a fit with you, what you're really helping each other do is decide to move away and find other people that fit you better. Okay, so I would argue on the side of this is really a loving thing to do for people, yourself and others. This is really a very mature and non-emotional, non-judgmental process, right? And the shocking thing about this system so far, so let's see what I say here. I've got some notes here. When first working with values matches, err on the side of moving slowly. And I might add in here, traction has a 90-day due diligence process of fairness, okay? Some warnings. Don't try to convert people, okay? Please let people be who they decide to be. Don't go out and go, hey, every good person in life does what they says, now you have to do it too. No, that's not what we're doing here, right? People get to be whatever people decide to be, and they deserve that respect for that, okay? So that's part of the process. However, there's this old adage of when somebody tells you who they are, please believe them, right? This is an old saying of, if some people will tell you, they'll be honest with you. They'll say, I see your values. That's just not me. Believe them, okay? Trust them. Let them have that say and let them be who they are. Okay, don't try to convince them and believe them. With that, I would. That was sort of my, my lesson plan is thinking through this. I want to just tell you maybe some background on this. We worked with a sponsor early on, and he did magical things for us. We were in 3 different syndications with him, maybe 4 actually. He returned 40% on one deal, 30% on another. A good sponsor. And we liked him, but when we came up with our 5 core values and we went through all the partners we had in this business, he came up as not a fit for us. And I'll tell you the problem with it was team player. We would have to, when we'd call him to ask how the project was going, we would have to ask like 20 questions. I mean, it was like, how's this? What's that? What's going on? He wouldn't just tell us, what was going on. And in the end, we said, okay, when it comes to team player, we believe he's just really not a fit for us. We had already started to move away from him because of the not fit issue. And he's still a friend of ours, you guys. We still talk to him. Like I say, I would argue I still love the guy, But he, in the end, he was the one sponsor who we lost money with. And fortunately for us, we didn't lose any investor money. It was actually my money, my wife and I's money that we invested. We lost $25,000, but in that project, $1.5 million of investment money went out the door with sort of the troubles and tribulations of that project. But I would just argue to you, this is one more element, and I would be interested for Cabrin and some of you who are sort of in the process of, you're sorting through people all the time. I would be interested for you to start to experiment with this process, see how it works for you, and start to think about this added element. I think, have saved ourselves some major grief in life by being able to move away on a business level, right? To decide not to partner in business deals with certain people because of the values, because of this matching process. And on the other hand, I would also argue to you, once you start talking to people about what your values are, they will move away from you if they're not a match. Okay, they will just go, look, I hear you, that's not me. It's okay, we can be friends, but we're not going to do a deal with you either, right? And I think that's fair. I think that's a fair perspective of, if they decide not to work with you based on values, it's the same thing we get to do with each other. It's both our rights to talk about our values and say, look, if we're not a fit, let's not be, I was thinking about some of our cultural backgrounds. I grew up, and I know this may be completely different from your background, but I grew up in a Christian background where there's some of these scriptures like, don't be unequally yoked. I remember as a kid learning that in church, right? It's like, I was like, what does that mean? Don't be unequally yoked. They use like a yoke, like the old days with two animals that they would yoke together to pull a plow. And I remember thinking about, I couldn't understand what they were talking about. What does that mean? And then there's another strange scripture in there where, and this is a little bit, I apologize for this, is like from my cultural background, and it may be completely different from yours. But there's a point where Jesus and his disciples are out doing their thing in the New Testament. And they've got all these crowds around them. And there's a point where their mother and brothers come to try to collect them. And there's such a big crowd, they have to like pass word in and go. And the word comes into him that your mother and brothers are here to collect you. And he looks around the room and he goes, these are my brothers and this is my mother, right? Sort of the strangest thing to me. And I remember growing up with that thinking, that doesn't sound right. It's almost like he's choosing other people over his family members, right? And I'm not a preacher, so I can't lay all this down for you, and I can't explain it all. But I would just argue to you, there's the concept that you're trying to find people that fit you based on values. And those people will be the closest people to you through life. And they're the ones you're looking for to go through this sort of crazy experience of a 5 to 7 year syndication deal. And it's this kind of values match thing that's like an added element that I would argue nobody ever taught me about until we sort of experienced it through these processes. So, okay, that's my kind of 2 cents worth on the whole thing. How about questions or comments or thoughts as you're hearing this and as you're thinking about how it applies to you? What do you guys got?
Well, for me, it just reminded me that I need to, because I downloaded, when you first recommended Traction, I downloaded the audiobook and I started listening to it, but I sort of like put it on the side. And now it's just a reminder that I need to pick that back up and get more in depth in it and find out more about what's going on, because I get to start thinking about the whole business aspect as opposed to just going and finding deals. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Who else?
Is that process of kind of the value match that you do with your team, is that something that's constantly ongoing? Because people do change and things like that stuff. Yeah. And if so, I mean, kind of how often are you kind of revisiting that to make sure that the values still align with your team?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's totally true. And we cover it quarterly. So Traction recommends you do a big annual meeting with your 5 positions, right? You go out for 2 days and they go through a whole agenda. And then quarterly, you meet and set your quarterly goals, and that's when we sit around. And anytime there's a new member to that team and or a change in the team, we go around the room and just do what you're talking about. We go, okay, and this is 5 of us. We know the values. We're pretty close, you guys. We're honest with each other. That's part of the value system. We literally go, okay, Ben, and we throw out the value, and everybody holds up their thumbs. And if anybody's got something like this or this, they get the chance to say what they're thinking. And if we feel there's a change needed, we make a change. And everybody's kind of in on it. They're in on it as in they're agreeing to the values to join the company, and they're agreeing to the values that's the decision to move. And we've moved almost everybody between Paul, Ben, Max, Beth, and Lisa. We've moved people through the 5 positions based on GWC, where we're like, there's still a values match. They just don't, at the moment, they don't want that position right now, for whatever reason. It just changes. And so you need that flexibility to go, okay, humans are very, very dynamic, and things come up. That one of the other teams that did the underwriting, they had a person leave the team. They had another person he got orders. He's shipping out on a, what do you call it in the military where they place you? My vocabulary.
Deployment?
He just got deployed. Okay, so their team is constant. Here they are, just 6 months into their team, and everything is changing. And so you need that traction system to meet up again quarterly. And guess what? Your entire business is up in the air. And I would argue you're watching the Geeks. I feel like we've added a whole education component to our company, and we really never wanted to do this. We kind of fought this. We didn't really want, we're not, Lindahl does that, right? Why would we do that? And then so strangely enough, here our business is changing again, and you're kind of on the inside of watching this. And I feel like the Geeks are as open as we can be, and that's part of the learning process for us. It's all going to change. Yeah. Well, Tarina, what do you think of that whole evaluation system of setting values and then regularly talking about whether people fit them or not?
Well, I think it mirrors what happens in corporate America, where businesses have to gather their annual reporting. So they require their managers to meet on a periodic basis, usually it's quarterly, and give a status report or a budgetary review to see where resources and funding or finances are being allocated. So it's all about how do you stay in business and how do you project moving forward. So I think it's a really good idea. And when you're just starting out, certainly there's going to be some growing pains. But as you were talking and going through the exercise, one thing that came to my mind was remove the emotions per se. I mean, it requires you to be very, very deliberate and intentional to not be so personal, thinking of it as rejection, if that makes any sense. So moving people around and allowing them to just bow out gracefully is so important, because some partnerships are not meant to be, and we need to be honoring of that. So I definitely feel that this is a really good approach.
Okay, thank you for that. Who else? Jay, what do you think?
Well, I've read Traction twice, and Good to Great. I read almost all of that. His son did a revision where he just adds some things on to the ends of some of the things that his father said. And so I understand the system. I've not implemented the system because I don't have enough team members working with me in multifamily yet. I do intend to implement it because it has all of the right components. So now, one of the things that Tarina said is very true. It's kind of a double-edged sword because you have to be fair to people. You have to be fair to people. For example, you can't that last ending statement of listening to someone when they tell you who they are. When they tell you they're that way, stop trying to convince them they're somewhere else. They've already told you who they are. So believe them and let them be who they are. So in that vein, you have your business. You have to see whether or not they can fit there, if they will be able to do the job, if they'll be happy in the job, and or do we not need to work with them at all? So all of those things are true, and in that part of it, you have to be how can I say, intentionally emotional, because you have to be smart enough to say, well, I have to cut this thread, but you also have to be emotional enough to say that I'm not trying to cut the person, as you mentioned before. So there has to be that business side of it that you can immediately, or not immediately, but you can get to the point where you say, yeah, we have to part ways. It's just, or that we shouldn't even get together. That has to. But then in the other side is, okay, we're not matching anymore, so somebody will have to go. So I agree with the whole system. I think that the whole system is great. I think that it takes a little bit of effort at the beginning to make sure that you have the right kind of people with you. Because if you can prevent the problem from the beginning, then you have a much better ride. If you're already dealing with people, that's everything is good. Because as everybody knows, and we've already talked about, everybody's mentioned that people change. Sometimes things change. Some they change for the better. Sometimes they change for the worse. So you have to be able to, even though you start out, everybody starts out on this journey, but 7 years is a long time to be around people, and a lot of things can happen in 7 years. So you hope that everybody can navigate those 7 years successfully. And I think that this is an excellent tool to keep you on the right path, because all of those meetings, and it seems like a ton of meetings. It does. When you really go through traction, what you'll see is that to implement it, there are a lot of meetings. And one of the things that it ultimately says down the path of the book is that, yes, there are those meetings, and what you find out is if you really implement it, they are needed. They aren't meetings that you should pass up. There are meetings that are needed, and many of the companies that put them into action found out over time, when they would shy away from the meetings because they felt like they didn't need them, that's when they started hurting, and they had to put them back to realize the full benefit. So I'll just bow out with, I'm all in on what traction brings to the table, what Good to Great brings to the table. And if I get into the business with people, I would hope that we could implement those things together and keep it going.
Nice. Okay, Cabron, go.
I'm pretty much the same. I've read Traction twice. I've read Good to Great as well. It's been a while. I think I read that twice actually too, but like I said, it was a long time ago. And I understand with having a team. Like I said, I got 2 virtual assistants. I got an acquisition manager, and kind of starting up my business up to this point has been kind of set. This is prior to me being aware of Traction. And it would be kind of, okay, let me just set this up and then run over here and try to set this up. And then, I just looked up one day and I had a team in front of me, and we would meet and stuff, but there wasn't really a strategic way of us keeping each other accountable. I didn't even know if we were value matched. So after reading the book and actually kind of seeing the way that I should be evaluating my team, and even when I'm looking at our growth in certain areas or our stagnation, it was kind of like, okay, again, we had to kind of move people around, and we had to reevaluate where we were, and it was kind of a real eye opener. And I can also see the value that it is completely necessary to have, because you don't even, at the time, if you're not deliberately taking accountability as far as who's on your team and the roles that they play and everything, the business will get away from you, and people are going to do whatever they want. If you're not actually, everybody's not on the same page, and you may think you're on the same page, but everybody's got their own agenda a lot of times, and you kind of got to make sure that everybody's on the same accord. And I think that's one of the best parts with the like you said, the amount of meetings that you have. The beauty of it is that they're not just, we just get around and everybody just kind of throw opinions out there, and they're all over the place. It's strategic, deliberate, intentional meetings that has a goal that's accomplished, and that keeps everything on track and everyone moving forward. So, I'm in the process of getting the L10 meetings and everything implemented. It is a process to switch from, we were just doing I do weekly team or weekly individual meetings and then one monthly team meeting, but kind of switching, the process. It is a process and in the forefront to just shift that mindset, get the whole team on board, kind of train them and acclimate them on the process as well. So it does take some effort in the forefront, but in the long run, definitely worth it. And any of my business endeavors that I go in for, I definitely make sure I'm implementing the traction model for sure.
Nice. Okay, Justin, go ahead.
All right, there we go. It's unmuted. I like it. I think that is basically what I like to think that I do in my personal life. Just kind of go through and say, is this somebody I could see myself spending a lot of time around? And I like the fact that it's a very organized way of doing that very same thing, but implementing it in the business space. And so I think it's really sharp, man. I'm definitely all over it. I have traction right now. I have not finished reading it, but I'm in the process. And so like this definitely does. It feels like something that I would want to do. I don't want to say that. This is something that I would want to do with people that I would be going into business with. And honestly, I mean, like in my personal life, does this person want to be involved? I feel like it has more applications than just business too. So.
Nice. Okay, Pedro, wrap it up, and then we're going to go to rate and wrap, and we'll be done. What's your comment?
I read Traction, and I feel that everybody has said pretty much the good points that when you evaluate, you have to have the same values. That way, the horror stories don't come out. I remember I was working in a brokerage firm where it was sell real estate, and a coworker had partnered with another person to purchase a house, and it's the same. It's kind of the same thing. They bought the person, and they thought that they can get the deal going, but it turned out to be a horror story. And so they didn't have this kind of value matching. They just saw the dollar signs because it was a deal that can be done, but it turned out to be a horror story. So the book Traction is is a guide to lay out how you have to look for someone that has the same values as you do, and the truth. They're gonna expose themselves if you just met them and they don't have the same values that you do. They will expose themselves. They will come out. It's just that are you as a person observant enough to see or to observe that person that you're working with will you be able to see the as the phrase said, if they're telling the truth, let them be and let them expose themselves. So hope that explains it.
All right, nice. Okay, so you guys, we have 3 minutes left. Go back to the meeting document. Scroll to the bottom. Justin and Jay, thank you. You guys are already there. Type your name and your rating. All right, Tarina, you down there? Are you finding us in that document? There you go. All right, as you're typing, Tarina. Justin, what's your rating?
I gave it an 8.
All right, Jay?
8.
Gabriel?
8 as well.
All right, I'm an 8. Michael?
You're on
Michael.
mute, Michael.
There I am. There was this helicopter
There you
flying
go.
up above. It was way too loud.
Yeah.
I think I'm judging myself on this because where I'm at and where I want to be. So I see I got a lot more catching up to do, especially with traction and work. So I'm going to do a 7 right now.
Okay, fair enough. All right, Tarina?
8.
All right, Pedro?
8.
Okay, you guys. Well, I thank you for your participation. I hope this information starts to expand your brain, and maybe if you can experiment with it, maybe it can start to move you down some directions. And if it saves you from even a single disaster in your life, I think it could be worth a lot to you. So I hope you can put it to work. Okay. That's it.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good
Bye,
weekend.
guys.
Yeah.
Call each other
Warren,
through the week if you need to. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was gonna say too. I don't know if you all had read the book Principles by Ray Dalio.